Shelomecha ufros aleinu. We're on page 360. Sukkot, Sukkot, Shelomecha. Yedidai, 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 ufros aleinu. Sukkot, Sukkot, Shelomecha.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Welcome to the Lieberman Chasnoff family, who is celebrating the bat mitzvah of Veronica tonight and tomorrow. And welcome to our new members that are here, Mona and Paul, who's new-ish, but Mona is very new, so hello and welcome. We also have a special guest that's visiting us from Rhode Island, Willie Weiss, who is the son of Rabbi Joseph Weiss. So he grew up in our congregation, and we're very glad you're here to celebrate Shabbat with us. Yes, so we just sang Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, and you might have heard a word in there that sounds like a holiday that we are celebrating. Maggie, do you know what that is? You were nodding your head. What does Sukkot sound like? What holiday? Sounds a lot like Sukkot. You got it. So we were just singing a song from a prayer called Hashkivenu that's asking God to spread over us a sukkah, a shelter of peace, shlomecha, that Maggie learned to read the word shalom in Hebrew this week, so that's pretty cool. So we're going to continue now with
Lo Yisagoy. And for this one, it's actually, we're going to start with some English words, and then we'll get into, and we'll learn some of the Hebrew. I don't think that any of it is actually here that I know of. But the English, you might know it. It's, I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. There's a whole lesson in there about how in Sukkot we're in a moment of vulnerability because we're hanging out in these sukkahs all week, and so it's kind of tricky. You know, we don't want to necessarily we don't want to be attacked, and you know, because you're in the wilderness, you don't know where you are necessarily, it's new spaces, and so in order to kind of connect that to what in order to bring in a more safety, then you also lay down your sword and shield, and then you can and then everybody will be together in peace. Here we go. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Lo yisagoy al goy charev. Here we go. Lo yisagoy al goy charev, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisagoy al goy charev, lo yisagoy al goy charev, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisagoy al goy charev. Last time, I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the
Beautiful, everyone. Let's continue with our bringing in Shabbat by lighting Shabbat candles. So we are on page 3, and I'd like to invite the president of our congregation, Dr. Sherry Copeland, to light the Shabbat candles. And let's read together on the top of page 3. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tivanu v'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, Sherry.
Welcome.
Let's continue on page 12 with the singing of Lechu Neranena.
That's not right.
It's close. We continue with Lecha Dodi, welcoming the Sabbath bride on page 20, and we'll sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
Here we go. Oopsies. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Here we go. Shamor v'zachor v'diburecha, ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'ritila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu b'nelcha, ki mekor habrecha, merosh mikdem esecha, sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha
door to welcome the Sabbath bride.
Shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvetzahala, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala.
You can turn around again.
Here we go.
While we're standing, everyone, I invite you to look around the room. Maybe look and see if you can see the extra Shabbat soul in one another's eyes, and maybe walk over to a new person that you haven't met yet, and or someone you haven't seen in a while, and say hello and Shabbat Shalom, and maybe find out something how their week was.
Veronica, I know you, but I haven't gotten to know you so well. So, how's your week? I guess it's been preparatory, getting ready for everything. In school. School does that. It gets in the way of everything. Very nice. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Let's do this one. It was that Tzaddik Gatama Yifrach Yifrach Yifrach.
Look at they love schmoozing. Great schmoozing, everyone. I know, it's very impressive. Yeah. I know. Well, thankfully we have all night to enjoy Shabbat. We'll continue on.
All day.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. We continue. Special delivery. Little bear with honey. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Let's continue on page 22 with Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat.
Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot L'Adonai U'lezamer L'Shimcha Elyon U'lezamer L'Shimcha Elyon Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot L'Adonai U'lezamer L'Shimcha Elyon U'lezamer L'Shimcha Hagid baboker chastecha ve'emunatcha balelot alei asor ve'alei navel alei yom bechinot Mizmor shir le'yom HaShabbat tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lezamer l'Shimcha Elyon u'lezamer l'Shimcha Elyon. So we're going to continue now with a little discussion on a special, I think this is this right? Is this working? Yes, no, yes. Okay, it is for the Zoom people, so that's good. Okay, so we are going to study a little bit about the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet, which is read at exactly this Shabbat every year, the Shabbat that is during Sukkot. It is a special reading. It's not a Torah reading. It's not a Haftarah reading. It's its own book, the book of Ecclesiastes. So I want to look at it a little bit tonight. So does everyone have one of these guys from the front table, and then also one of these from the front hall table?
two pieces of paper. So as we're getting papers, the most famous part of the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a lot of really famous parts, but probably the most famous part is the part that you might know from a Birds song. Does anyone know this song? To everything turn, turn, turn. Okay, so this is from the book of Ecclesiastes. The Birds did not make it up. And would someone like to read for us verses 1 through 7 on the big sheet? So we have that in mind. And if you raise your hand, I will give you the microphone so you can read it, and the Zoom people can hear it. Does anyone want to read that for us? A season is set. Thank you. Just verses 1 through 8, because number 9 is, we got to talk about number 9.
I don't even see 9.
Okay.
Is
1
9
through 8.
Is 9 on the sheet?
9's on the sheet, but we're gonna pause, because it's, cover up number 9 with your hand. If you're an educator, you would have it like folded up already, but don't look at 9, just look at
I
1
see.
through 8.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Lori.
A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planning and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for shunning embraces, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for ripping and a time for sewing, a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for war and a time for peace.
Okay, thank you so much. So now, without looking at verse 9, well, actually, how about this? Let's look at verse 9. Thank you so much. So verse 9, not in the bird song. In verse 9, it says, "What value, then, can the man of affairs get from what he earns?" What value, then, can the man of affairs, the one who does things, get from what he earns? So now, tell me, how does this change? Like, what is the meaning before you read verse 9? And what is the meaning after you read verse 9? Any thoughts? Like, what kind of text is this before you read verse 9? Yes, Richard. Here.
Oh, okay. So I kind of think that it means that if you read 1 through 8, it sort of says a man of 9 says a man of affairs means someone who's out in the world. What does he really know about life, and what does he understand about life? There's a season, for this, a season for that, as 1 through 8 explains. And sometimes people who are in the world lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really understand the
interesting.
important things in life.
Okay, so I think, let me just repeat back. So if you're a man of affairs or a person who does things in the world, maybe you might lose perspective that there is a season for all kinds of different things. Like, you kind of get stuck in your own affairs.
Yep.
So it's a good message for you as a person, anyone who is a person of affairs who does things, to remember there is a time for love and a time for hate. Okay, really nice. Thank you.
A balance.
There's a balance. Okay. Anybody else have a comment? Yeah. Richard, can I prevail upon you to we have to kind of pass the microphone around for the Zoom people. Thank you so much. It's, good exercise. Okay.
Okay, so I didn't know about this before, but so it sounded like, at first it just sounded like it was about seasons and change, and then after verse 9 it sounded like it was about futility. it's not worth doing anything.
Yeah,
That's
so,
what I heard.
right, that's another potential reading, right? Like that, okay, but what's the point? If there's a hate and love and throwing stones and gathering stones, embracing, not embracing, if all these things just happen over and over and over again, another really famous thing that Kohelet, Ecclesiastes says, is there's nothing new under the sun. These things, all things happen over and over again. So what's the point? Why isn't it just futile to be a person of affairs? What's the point of doing anything if things just shift back and forth throughout time? Yeah, Lori.
So throughout this whole reading, I don't know, for some reason the word beshert comes to my mind.
Okay.
Or like a bigger force, like God is really kind of, in charge of, when we're going to heal and when we're going to reap what we sow and when we're not, and when we're going to weep and when we're going to dance.
Interesting.
So in the end, it's like, if it's not really in our hands, then in a sense, what's the effort for? But there's another presence that's larger, that's really in control.
That is very interesting. So one of these passages, right, we find this in the Tanakh in several places where God isn't really mentioned, but you kind of feel God's presence there, right? Like, yeah, really nice. Thank you. That's really interesting. Yeah, oh, live, okay. From mother to child, from generation to generation.
Thank you, Mother. When I read this passage, I think about the last line, man of affairs. That, to me, means a businessman. So when I read that, I think of like a businessman as someone who profits off of very specific things, unless you're like a peddler and you're selling very various wares and services. But most people don't. Most people are like, I sell cars all the time, or like, I make food all the time. So in that sense, it's like going back to what Richard said about getting stuck in one affair, getting in a rut and losing track of things around you. It's like, as you focus all of your attention on one thing or making money off of one thing, you could lose sight of like the natural progression of things through the world. Like someone who sells like snowblowers, what are you doing the other 3 seasons of the year?
Oh.
You're a snowblow seller? That's not gonna work with the seasons, baby. That's just a very literal example, but it applies to a lot of other capitalism.
So this is maybe like business advice. Like remember, if you sell snowblowers, diversify your business because there are other seasons, right?
Or
A time
just
for
like
snow
don't,
and a time for summer. Yeah.
or just like don't focus in so much on capitalism that you lose track of the natural progression of the world.
Okay, nice. Okay, great. Okay, so thank you everyone, very interesting. I want to just draw our attention to one more verse here, the verse on the front of the pamphlet. I kind of did some crazy highlighting here. So there's a very, a key word that happens over and over again in the book of Ecclesiastes over 30 times. And we know that when the biblical authors used a word over and over again, they wanted you to really think about it. And he says, I observed all the happenings beneath the sun. Right, we talked about that before, like everything happens under the sun. I observed it all. And I found that all is vanity. All is futile, I think Lori said before. And it's the pursuit of wind. Now I added a couple other translations here. The word hevel also means breath. It also means breath. And this word ruach, a shepherd comes from that same word. A roeh is a shepherd. And then ruach, you might have heard before, is wind. So there's this interesting sort of maybe double meaning here, right? Everything is vanity, everything is like the pursuit of wind, but also everything is the breath. Everything is breathing in and breathing out, right? As if we do yoga or meditation or some other thing like that, we know it's like about breathing in, breathing out, letting go, letting things pass us by, being mindful in the present moment, and letting the seasons wash over us, as it were, right? Same kind of interesting image I find with like the shepherd, the one who tends the wind. It's like sort of a loving image, right? Of something our pursuits are maybe like the wind, but we tend to them and we shepherd them like lovingly, even though we know that they're gonna pass by. They're like the breath. So I wanted to just share that a little bit about this book, because on the one hand, sometimes you can read it and feel really depressed, like there's no point to everything is futile. But sometimes you can read this and also think, okay, like I can breathe in and out and things will wash over me in the present moment and I can enjoy them. That's another big theme in Ecclesiastes, of just enjoying life also. And know that they are gonna pass, but they're part of our lives and they're here for us to enjoy and appreciate, but also ultimately let go of, which I think is probably why this book is connected to Sukkot, because in the Sukkah, when we're in the Sukkah, we can also feel that fragility, right? And we can feel breath and wind in the Sukkah, and really sense our vulnerability and also our ability to just be in contact with the present moment through our breath. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We continue on page 26 with Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברה חירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה ברכו לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה ויאמרו
Amen. Page 28. Seated. Let's turn to page 30. We read together, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'alayla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uven layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. I have to say, as I was reading this prayer, I was thinking very much about what Lori was saying about God's presence in Kohelet with the seasons alternating, and you see it right here in this prayer, right? That God is creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light. You see the seasons changing, etc., throughout this prayer. So I think that's maybe the God of that part of Kohelet is speaking right there too. So let's take a deep breath together as we prepare for Shema on page 34. Just letting go of the week that happened and really starting to get into this present moment of Shabbat. You can close your eyes or cover your eyes as we continue with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, וחיו נטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים אלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We continue on page 40 with our people's song for freedom, Mi Chamocha.
משה ומרים, זליאנו ואמרו, זליאנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
We continue on 42 with a song we sang right at the beginning of our prayer service. It's taken from this prayer right here, Hashkivenu. You're going to see the words, the third line down, Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, asking God to really be a sukkah of shalom, a sukkah of peace over us. continue on page 44 with Beshamru.
Shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביני ובני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We rise now as we turn to page 46 for our standing prayer, our Amidah. So we'll begin on page 46, and then Veronica will continue leading us on pages 48 and 50. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid milatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth will declare your praise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Umelech Chasadim Tovim, לקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מחלחל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. נאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
We continue now praying silently through to page 62, using the words in the Siddur in the prayer book or the words in your own heart, after which you may be seated.
Shalom bimroma, Uyas shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Amen. Hey, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru,
We continue now with Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of Torah, which Veronica will be doing tomorrow. And great job, Veronica, on leading the prayers tonight. So we are going to rise now as we prepare to take the Torah from the Ark. And I'd like to invite Willie Weiss to come and open the Ark, page 246. as its gift to all who treasure it.
Page 248. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu l'Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachtav. Lecha Adonai hagdula v'hagvura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. Ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz. Echa Adonai hamamlacha v'amitnaseh lechol rosh. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim haolam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim haolam omed. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al haTorah ve'al ha'gemilut chasadim. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time and a purpose under heaven. We're on page 360. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together.
Okay.
I have a little something. So everybody can be seated. We'll be on, what page was it? 1085 in the Torah, not this one, in that Torah. And if you have that with you. And we're going to be reading a section that's not really part of the weekly Torah portion cycle, but rather it's connected to Sukkot. And basically what happens is this is something, I'm going to tell you something that you already know, but it's just something that kind of enlightens something that's going on within that gives pulls back the sheet a little bit. the curtains, that's the word, and it shows you kind of something that's happening, which is that we all are, I shouldn't say we all, when I was a kid, I was taught about Pavlovian theory. The idea is this idea where this guy Pavlov would ring a bell and he would feed his dog every time he rang a bell. And over time, he would keep ringing the bell and he would keep feeding his dog. And eventually, he would ring the bell and the dog's mouth would just start salivating. The dog would just start getting hungry and would think that food was coming, even if there was no food connected. And I think that's kind of what's going on here, in that every time you get to a certain part in the service, in the weekly cycle, in the yearly cycle, with every holiday, there's a different Torah reading, and there's a different tune that you might read. One good example of that we just did is you might think of die 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 die, which is, does anyone know? Exactly, it's the new year. And you hear that tune, and all of a sudden you think, oh, we're in Rosh Hashanah. We're in the time of being in the year. So this is another. And then other examples that I like to think of are around the food that you eat. Obviously, around the different the rituals that you do. You're not shaking the lulav and the etrog in Hanukkah. That's specific. And it's all connected also, what I like to think about is it's all connected to the annual kind of agricultural cycle where not all of the tunes necessarily, but the foods that you eat, as a good example, are very directly connected in that, say this is a holiday in which the leaves that you're shaking are leaves that you would get from that would bloom at this time of year. And you can think about it as you're going, and so as we're going through the yearly cycle, this is a long-term project, think about kind of the things that we're eating and the things that we're, and the songs that we're singing and how they might be connected from agricultural, from a historical, from a mythological, and also, of course, from a personal perspective, why it would feel relevant in that time of year for you. So I'll leave it there. And with that, let's read.
So we're reading about the sacrifice that was done on Sukkot?
Yes, right now we're reading about the sacrifices that were delineated for each day in the times of the temple. Thank you. And we are in the 5th day of Sukkot, so we're going to read from the 4th and 5th days for that, so it's specific.
Oh, sweet. So for our Aliyah, let's see.
Yes.
If you are celebrating a certain thing that is happening at this time in the season, like a certain special event maybe in your life or something else that you want to celebrate that has to do with this season or Sukkot or maybe like a life cycle event, and you want to come up for an Aliyah to the Torah, we would love to have you come on up for a blessing. Anybody that wants to could come up who's already had a bar bat mitzvah, and if you want to be accompanied by someone who hasn't, that's also okay. But our Torah blessings are on page 250, and I see we have a brother and a sister of a bat mitzvah girl. So come on over here. You're going to come around to our student cantor's right side over here. Hello, and come on,
So we have the
Liv.
first one here, so
Yes,
it's actually
also,
it's easy.
definitely.
We'll do this first line, and then we'll respond with the second and third line, or the second line, and then you'll do the second line and the rest. Do you know it?
Yeah.
Want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Havarach Leolam Ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Uvayom harvi'i parim asara elim shnayim kvasim bnei shana arba'a asar hamil atmimim minchatam v'niskehem laparim le'elim ulakvasim b'misparam kamishpat useir izim echad chatat milvar olat hatamid minchata v'nisko uvayom hachamishi parim tisha elim shnayim kvasim bnei shana arba'a asar tmimim uminchatam v'niskehem laparim laelim ulakvasim b'misparam kamishpat useir chatat echad milvad olat hatamid uminchata v'nisko. Yes. Yeah. So the blessing after here.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu haTorah.
Amen.
Beautiful. And before you go, a quick blessing for you that you should really enjoy the season that you are celebrating for whatever reason you are celebrating it or this special event. And always carry special memories of this time going forward that will sustain you and inspire you in your lives. So I bless you with that on this Shabbat, and thank you for doing the bracha. Thank you.
Yes.
In the presence of our Torah now, we turn to prayers for healing of those in need of healing of body, of mind, or of spirit. And in our pamphlet, you can see names of people whom we are holding in our hearts in our community. So you can take a look at those and pray for those folks. And if there are other names of people for whom you are praying, please share their names as my eyes meet yours. We continue with Misha Beirach on page 253.
Source of strength, who bless the one
rise now as we dress the Torah and prepare to return it to the ark on page 252.
Bezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. מציון תצא תורה,
כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזובו, עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם בכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. We continue with Aleinu on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Is anybody here in the period of Shiva, 7 days following the passing of a loved one? Thank you. Is anybody here in the period of Shloshim, 30 days following the death of a loved one? Is Shana, 1 year following the death of a loved one? Is anybody observing a yard site this Shabbat? Yeah, Mona, will you rise and share their name? Thank you. Remain standing, and we'll, anybody else have a yard site? Oh, Richard, yeah. No? Okay. We recall now also those whose yard sites we observe in our community this week: Charles Abramson, Shirley Almer, Samuel Apt, Sonia Berger, Leo Deutsch, Abraham Doxson, Solomon Edwards, Jacob Fish, Isadora Funt, C.D. Godin, Abraham Goldberg, Harry Handon, Joseph Hertzfield, Karen Lenny Lerman, May Rose Lifson, Hyman Meyerson, Kalam Mishkin, William Nagin, Shimon Perez, Arthur Price, David Prusson, Simon Rudenko, Louis Silverman, Howard Schlossberg, Dr. Gertrude Stern, Claire Toback, and Isadore Weber. We rise now in community with our mourners as we continue with the Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Bi'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon u'b'yomechon u'b'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zaman kariv v'miru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam ul'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal. Shemei dekudasha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alama v'miru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya. B'chayim aleinu ba'al kol Yisrael v'miru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ba'al kol Yisrael v'miru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and all Israel, and comfort to all of the bereaved among us. And we say together, Amen. You may be seated. And I'd like to ask Dr. Sherry Copeland, our president, to share with us some announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. A special mazel tov to the Lieberman Chasnoff families, and especially Veronica, who's going to chant for us tomorrow. Let's see. Simchas Torah is Monday, the 27th at 6 o'clock. We're having a potluck supper and service. Tuesday, the 28th, 10:30, is the festival and Yizkor service and a Kiddush luncheon. And our Lador Vidor intergenerational program for teens and seniors will be on Sundays from 11 to 1 and starting on October 24th. Happy Friday night, everyone.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. For our closing song tonight, we're going to sing a special song for Sukkot, which we've been singing a few times this week. So, V'samachta b'chagecha. Is that it? Okay, it's here.
It's a newish song for me, so I'm still learning it a little bit. So I'm going to need some help from you, Rabbi Epstein.
Page 359 at the bottom, everyone, are the words.
Oh, great. Yeah, so the words are V'samachta b'chagecha, which means, and you shall be happy in this holiday, because it's a holiday of joy.
It's a different version. You go.
Oh, no. You know a different tune? Samachta
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat
everyone.
shalom.
All right, we're going to continue outside with Kiddush and Motzi. So on your way out, if someone could bring the wine and juice and challah out with us, and we'll be able to enjoy some Oneg Shabbat, enjoyment of Shabbat. Shabbat shalom.